I'm not going to make this large because I want to go through this systematically in a short introduction to each model and how it links to the one before and after it. So can you guys see this okay? Yeah? Okay. So in the process of decloaking, which is what we're here for, we begin to notice that what we have known has not fit that which we want to become. It does not fit, it does not map with, it does not, there's a conflict as per pain in the body, for example, that lets us know that the truth of our experience does not map to that which we already know. So in comes this process, for example, called decloaking, and this paradigm called WEL-Systems, and this body of knowledge that says, look, there's an alternative way for you to consider your reality. So we delve into this exploration as a process of discovering something about ourselves that we don't know, that we don't know. And in that process, our capacity for self-understanding transforms, right? That's when you have those aha moments. You'll see the green dot there in the structure of reality, is that you can only have a green dot moment in the domain of the unknown. So if you're seeking to compress all of the knowledge that ever existed into the slither of what you know that you know, that's all you're working with. And if that's all you're working with, then your world is very compressed and small. So throughout today and the next 4 days, what we'll do in this exploration is seek to widen that what you know that you know into what I know that I don't know. And in doing so, you open up your own capacity, you open up your own willingness, you open up your own opportunity for discovery. And you begin to trust that there's a lot that you don't know, and maybe, just maybe, you can begin to filter your experience through these perceptual filters and stay curious about what you don't know that you don't yet know. So that's a really powerful model, and it's such a good one to keep coming back to. I think, Celine, you'd mentioned on our intro call about when the master needs to go back to the basics, right? So that's that model, that's the basics, because that reminds you that no matter what your frustration, no matter what your issue, no matter what you're experiencing in the moment, if you pause sufficiently to go back to, okay, what is it that I don't know about this experience, right? It opens you up to curiosity about that, as opposed to compressing you into a choice from the box of your cultural conditioning. So that's the whole point of this introductory experience, is to get you to see that there's a much larger world out there than the one that you have come to perceive as real. So if you do that as a first thing, right? Like if you're aware that, okay, well, what is it that I don't know? That brings you into the predictable structure of thought. So this word predictable is key. Why? Because it's predictable. You can pretty much take any experience, run it through the predictable structure of thought, and notice where you are in the structure of thought. So depending on the questions that you're asking yourself and that you're curious about, it will tell you where you are in the structure of thought. So if you're thinking about, what am I going to do? Right? If your immediate thought is, I received this email, what am I going to do now? Oh my God, am I going to have to do this and that? And am I going to have to pull out the knives and go to my familiar strategy? Then what you'll notice is that you're at the behavior level. Because what am I going to do? It's a what of a behavior. So that gives you information about what's holding that in place. So we'll explore this one a lot deeper tomorrow. But the key thing about the predictable structure of thought is that every logical level is contained in the one below it. So it is contained and it is, so the one below is directed by the one above, and the one above contains everything below it. Does that make sense to you guys? At least for now. So we'll explore this one quite in depth tomorrow because it's a very critical model. And if we don't actually grok this one, the rest of them begin to fall apart and you don't really see how they interconnect. So this is a really critical one. And maybe what you can do tonight, if you have the energy, is go to the Decloaking audio files and listen to the file on the predictable structure of thought, because it'll prime your nervous system for exploration tomorrow, and it will allow you to ask bigger questions because you've already gone through the first layer. So Sarah, let's pick your example, right, that you were experiencing. So in your moment, the first thought in your head is, what am I going to do? Right? So an external thing happens and it impacts your internal state. And inside of you, you go, what am I going to do? So what you've done in that moment is compress what's available to the domain of what you know that you know. So now in the structure of reality, you're in that teeny tiny slither because you're seeking to create from a behavior down response. So the where and the when and the environment would be you received an email at this time during decloaking or whatever, right? So what am I going to do is in response to the email that you received. When you're in that line of inquiry, what's not in your conscious awareness, so this is where pattern interrupt is so critical, because what's not in your conscious awareness is the how. So what are my strategies that are available to me historically, again, within the domain of what I know that I know, so teeny tiny slither, that will create, what am I going to do? So the strategies are held in place by your pre-existing, pre-framed presuppositions of the cultural conditioning that you've internalized as real and are not questioning. So if you want to change your behavior, you have got to be willing at the very least, first of all, to pause and to begin to question, how do I know that? Right? So if I have to pull out the knives, how do I know that that's what I have to do? Right? Which now presses up against the beliefs, values, and attitudes that you hold as real. And once you start pressing up against those, you begin to discover the things that hold the structure of your reality in place within that tiny slither. Does that make sense? Yeah. And you can see how, right? Because if you want to change your behavior, if you want to write an email, which is the goal of your first goal, right? You want to respond to the email. The next thing you got to think about is, well, what am I going to do? How am I going to do the thing that I want to do? And if you want to explore the how you're going to do the thing that you're going to do, you got to go into, well, why do I even want to do that? Because the why is a bit tricky of a question. Because quite often if you start with a why, there's a because and there's a why and there's a because and there's a why and there's a because. So it gets very loopy, right? So in order to pattern interrupt the why, I'd get curious about the structure of reality that you think is real, right? About the beliefs, values, and attitudes that you think are real, which then answers the why. It's just if you ask yourself a why question, and we'll talk about this tomorrow, but if you ask why, there's always a because. And it's like, doesn't matter, because now you're trapped in a loop. So the point, you're right, Sarah, the point is to evoke a wave. That's the whole point of everything we do in this paradigm for now until eternity. So the whole point is to evoke the wave. And the whole point of this model is to show you that the way to begin to get curious about all of that for yourself is to go at least one logical level up. And what we want to really be doing is getting to the choice point and beginning to differentiate of all of the stuff that I'm noticing that I want to do or that I, believe. Is it historical, or is it moving me toward my emerging authentic self? So a question I love to always ask is, with this choice, who am I becoming? Who am I capable of becoming? Right? All of this that's showing up is here for me to discover who I'm capable of becoming. And so as you stay with this, and we can explore it deeper tomorrow, where it's like, okay, so this is what I want to do. I want to respond and like fire, spew it at them because fuck them, how dare they, all that sort of stuff. My belief about it is that, well, I don't really trust myself. I don't really trust them. I'm trapped. I don't know where else to go. I'm not really sure how to handle any and all of this. They hold the power because they have the money. I also never going to send them back. Also, you see what I'm saying? There's a lot of story there. So then you stop there and then you go, okay, so now I'm at the choice point now. I'm in the here and I'm in the now. How do I know what I know, right? What are the belief systems? It's not even about deciphering them. It's about noticing that what I'm holding to be real may not be. So what don't I know that I don't know? Quite possibly in this moment, I don't know who I'm capable of becoming if I pause. I don't know who I'm capable of becoming if I create sufficient space within my body, pushing the pause button, because I will write an email. It's a matter of how am I going to do that? So am I going to do it from fear and compression and repression, or am I going to go to who I'm capable of becoming, and maybe even, dare I say, to interconnectivity? So who else is an ally for me in this exploration? So critical to begin to understand this one, because now, as we move into the iceberg of the self, you begin to notice that there's two spaces that we sense from. There's the outside that we're calibrating for, and that's the environment behavior stuff. Super easy to calibrate for it. I got an email and they're telling me X. I came to this apartment and I walked in and I noticed Y. So it's very easy to calibrate in the physical domain what's there. What we're not trained to do, in fact, we are profoundly beaten into compliance to never, ever, ever face, look at, explore, is our internal landscape. So it's that space of the internal sensing. So things like the strategies that we're adopting, right? So am I going to have to pull out knives? That's a really good one. Because there's a presupposition there that I'm going to have to pull out knives. But questioning that, the legitimacy of that, how do I know that? What's going on inside of my body when I experience that or when I think about that, all of these things remain hidden. So this is what Nassim speaks about. From our language, from our perspective in the WEL-Systems paradigm, it's the deeper you go, so at the very least to the choice point, and even deeper still to spirituality, the deeper you go, the more you connect to the larger space that you are, right? You're not this body. And you calibrate for reality through this body. So from icebergs of the self, we go to icebergs interacting. And what this is doing is taking icebergs of the self and saying, look, there's you and there's also another person, and what's going on inside of you is also going on for the other person. So what you're paying attention to will create the outcome of the engagement. And here's the thing, the person that's more stable, the person whose body is a calmer vibration, will pull the other person in. The opposite can also be true, where the person that's most out of control can pull another into their space. So that's why you have to get really good at staying internally focused. Like, you got to stay in your body. And in doing so, it's much harder to get pulled into someone else's reality. And we do it all the time. Like, we do it all the time. So the deeper you go, the more you have rapport with yourself, the more you have rapport with another. Make sense to you guys? So, because if you stay at the external level, you did this and you did that. And I mean, come on, you're never going to get anywhere fun. But the drama will be there, right? That fire energy will be there. That intensity will be there. So the pull to want to stay there is pretty significant. The desire to pattern interrupt has to be mindful, because you don't want to live like that, or you do. So it's like, own it. So this one, Androgynous Baby, is one of my absolute favorite models, because this speaks to the power of our body, the power of the capacity of our body to transform the quality of our experience. This process, when looked at from a historical perspective, can feel profoundly disempowering, right? Because look at everything that gets in the way of us creating a nervous system, right? So, like, not creating, but look at everything that contributes to us, our experience in our body and our nervous system, right? It starts preconception. We know at least 3 months preconception, and quite possibly more. So if it starts preconception, it makes you feel like, damn, I'm a little bit powerless in all of this. Well, up until the age of 0 to 7, absolutely. Thereafter, you discover different ways to reclaim your power, right? Like outburst of fuck you, you're not going to do this anymore, right? It put a stop to that. So in that nanosecond, she pattern interrupted everything that was real and true for her up until that moment. And now she discovered, wait a minute, this thing, rage, feels like power. So I'm going to keep it. And then beginning to notice when it's no longer serving her. So the power of this model is not just in the history, but in the nanosecond that you're in. Your body is constantly calibrating at massive speeds, because it's calibrating for 10 to the 10 to the 11 neurological connections per second. And we'll do the math tomorrow. I promise, it's fun. Because when you see it visually, it's like, wait a minute, is that real? So you can apply this process in your life to actually transform your nervous system, so you transform your experience. But the more you run the habituated thing, the more the experience, the history hijacks your body, as opposed to your presence hijacking the experience. So nested living systems. So these two models, Androgynous Baby and nested living systems, we delve deeply into in engaging, and there's a reason for that. Once you discover all of this leading to who you came to believe yourself to be, you then discover who you're capable of becoming through the models that follow after the quantum biological human. And you practice it for some time, right? Like, you actually go in the real world and you have experiences, and then you bring these models to life in your experience, and you begin to notice that, oh, I'm not dead yet. That's pretty good. Oh, I'm still here. That's pretty good. And then we delve into the depth of these two models in engaging, because that's when you have a foundation, a more solid foundation of how else to live. So in the nested living systems model, super powerful model because it speaks to fractals. Chip off the old block, right? So who we create in our family unit is so predictable that it's a little bit nauseating when you really think about it. So who we become is a product of our upbringing, and it is reliably predictable to know what happened and how it happened and where in the family system you fall in, right? Because there are roles that we adopt that we're all familiar with here. So how you learn to be who you think you are, right? Your culturally conditioned self is in the family, is reinforced by the other families, is reinforced in the community, is reinforced in the culture, is reinforced pretty much worldwide. So there's differences in the details, but there's a pattern that we're all exposed to. So all of these things, all these nominalizations, like for example, success, power, leadership, effectiveness, respect, get internalized as real in a particular definition of those things in the family system. And then you're not supposed to question it, right? You're not supposed to redefine it for yourself. You're not supposed to even look at it. That's not what we're doing here, right? Like we want to look at all of this. And we want to notice the ways in which we're replicating the fractals as they have been in our own family system out of our awareness. So in the quantum biological human, and this is in decloaking, this is the most important model of them all. Why? Because this model brings to your conscious awareness where you're choosing to stand in your moment. So we can narrow it down quite basically to two ways to stand: Newtonian science, historical, familiar, or quantum science, evolution, expansion. So we'll delve into what's involved in Newtonian science and what are the presuppositions that we carry in our life when we live from that paradigm. And it is a paradigm, it is a mindset. And what are the presuppositions that are held in the quantum side of the dotted line? And the red dotted line is absolutely critical because it's the invitation to let you know, hey, this is the choice point, right? If you're awake enough and aware enough to pause in the moment that you're in and you go to this model, you will notice what presuppositions you're carrying in that moment that are causing you distress. And it will invite you to push the pause button and make a different choice and step into mindfully the quantum paradigm until the leap happens inside of you and you now know you are that thing. But if it's new for you, it's really important that you understand that this is a choice point. Like this is a choice between history and culture and upbringing and the pause in the now and the right side of the dotted line, right? Which is quite literally the quantum side of the dotted line in this case. So for example, with you, where it's like, it's going to be hard, right? It can't be that easy. That's the Newtonian side that says, look, there's a normal, there's an abnormal, change is incremental. You got to slow down. You got to understand. You got to reduce the thing to all its parts. You got to dissect it so you find the details. And, you really got to put an effort and work and you really got to understand it. So from that side, that's all true. And then there's the quantum side where change is instantaneous, right? Where it's spiral in nature. There is no normal. You don't know the one thread that you pull at where it's going to lead. So you don't know, pulling at that thread, you cannot reliably predict where it's going to lead, but you know that in the pulling of the thread, you've unraveled the tapestry. So all of those models up until this one speak to how we came to be who we believe ourselves to be. At that red dotted line, the shift into the quantum happens. And it's a process of now discovering who we're capable of becoming. So this is really critical because it lets you know that there's a historical story, and then it's only relevant so long as it brings you to the choice point, to the evoking of the wave, and then here you are now on the quantum side. And on the quantum side, so now moving on to Bio Baby, the body is the key. Why? Because we'll explore in the Huna model in a second. The higher self, or the signal from self, or consciousness, or void, or whatever language you want to put to it, the God force that we each are, the force, life force that we each are, communicates directly with the body. And the more relaxed the body is, the more stable the body is, the more quiet that there is going on in the body, the more you can actually hear the signal from self. So there's a way that the body is built, and there's a way that it works, and we'll touch on this a little bit, but the point of this model ultimately is that you want to create a relaxed experience for yourself. Be in the receptive rest and digest space rather than fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Right? Because that's a sympathetic nervous response, and happy to explore the nervous system with you if that's something that calls to you. Because there's different ways of engaging the nervous system, and they have different purposes. So that all lives in the Bio Baby experience. So if you grok that your body, so deferring to the body, is critical and imperative, and without that, you cannot get the transformation that you seek, that's pretty good takeaway from this experience. So if that's literally the only thing you're left with. So if the body is the key, which it is, signals dancing makes more sense. Because in signals dancing, you'll notice there's 4 signals that Louise has boiled it down to. There, depending on who you read and where, there's more. But in this paradigm, there's 4. And for me, that makes a lot of sense. So there's the signal from self, from the essence of what I am. Everybody's born with it. It's never not there. It's constantly part of your experience. And your capacity to hear it depends on your integration of signals number 2 and 3. It depends on how well you have digested and metabolized the signal from the external environment, what you think everybody else out there wants from you, what dogma that lives in your awareness, whether you're at work, which is pretty significant dogma, whether you're in church or wherever it is that you are. There's rules, there's regulations, there's expectations, there's rewards, and there's punishments that are made evident. So for example, with the mRNA injections, right? It's like the external environment said, if you don't do these things, you will be shunned and shamed from society. You will be literally shunned and shamed from your own family system. People will not like you. In fact, you're a grandma killer, right? So all of that was coming in from the outside world. And on the inside, the signal from the internal environment, so signal number 3, it goes, oh, wow, there's that information coming in. Impulse and signal from self says, nope. And in comes all of this stuff from the outside world, and inside yourself, if you don't know how to protect your internal state from the external noise coming in, the internal environment will take over from history, and it will say, remember last time you did that? You got into real trouble. Authorities saying that, doctors, they really know what they're talking about. And if you dare to defy them, do you know what's going to happen? Oh my God, what will happen if you're not invited to Christmas dinner? It's all going to be over, and then your children are going to be excluded from society forever. right? So you can see that there's all of these stories that begin to pop up, and they stem from the historical anchors, the historical beliefs, values, and attitudes, strategies, habits, and patterns that we've internalized as real from childhood. So it's really important to begin to think process rather than content, because in this case, if you're not aware of the process, you will be lost to the content, and you'll try to figure out who's right and who wants what, and what should I believe, and where do I learn about that, and let me go and Dr. Google, and like you will dilute further your capacity to actually hear the truth of who you are, the truth of signal from self. And signal number 4 is the one that actually shows up in the world as the you that you show up as. So if you're driven by signals 2 and 3, you will, I'm going to look it up. Just give me a second because I wrote it down. Authenticity versus appearance. Right? So if you're operating from signals 2 and 3, you might appear to another the way that they, would find appeasing. However, you're not authentic in yourself. So it is a choice how you want to show up in the world. So if you want to be authentic because the quality of your life will improve, what you want to do is pause sufficiently to be able to differentiate between signals 1, 2, and 3, so you can make a choice as to how you actually show up in the world. I have heard her in the engaging audio files, if I'm not wrong. I don't remember, so don't shoot me if I'm wrong. I don't care. I think it's in the engaging CDs, though. I'm pretty sure about that, where she talks about that somebody, don't know who, but somebody had written a book and had 16 signals, and she reduced it to the 4 that we see here.
Okay.
So
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so for me, this 4 makes sense. 16 is overwhelming. And
yeah, because I as I was contemplating that, because I was writing about it, like I was writing an article, and I think it was back in March. And what came up to me, not just then, but previous years before, was the information that can arise from maybe the subconscious or the soul level of past lives. And where would that be put?
signal number 1.
Okay.
Because that is the information from the void.
Okay.
Right? So there is no time in the void. There is no
good point.
Physical space the way we experience it. There is no it's like the way I experience it is like there's the particles of the particles of the particles, right? So it's like it's quantum in its expression. So there's nothing that lives in that space as solid. So how you pull it into a physical domain is what makes the difference. But there is no past, present, future. It's all of it at the same time expanding.
Yep, makes sense. Okay.
Well, that's exactly it, Sarah, right? Like there's a higher order intentionality for descending. So it's like there you are, discombobulated, right? There's no form to your essence. There's no form. And when you know the structure of thought, you realize that as you descend down logical levels, it becomes more solid, right? So it's like a massive, let's say, wave starts to coagulate, and then as it descends, it becomes more solid, right? But there's no solidity to our body, right? We're mostly space, but nonetheless, we have a physicality to us. If you came into this planet and sufficiently integrated signals 2 and 3, you would no longer have a desire or need for a body. Who I am is not Stella. That's the name of this device that you can recognize me from. And I love my name. I'm not saying I don't love my name. I love my name. I love my device. The essence of what I am is the name of my signal. So the more I give myself permission to notice that 2 and 3 exist, but they're not the real deal, right? They're just chatterboxes that like drama and intensity and trauma, right? They love that shit. So if I begin to notice that that's what they're doing and I go, oh, wait a minute, is that who I am? And is that who I want to continue to become? And in that nanosecond, that thought interrupted the pattern that feels real in my body, because all I've known is signals 2 and 3 and momentary glimpses of signal 1. Am I safe here? Do I feel safe here? Yes or no? And then you hear that, right? So for you, it might be, is it time to respond to this? Yes or no? And you might hear, no, right? And then immediately the but is going to come up. Immediately, almost instantaneously, so quickly that you may convince yourself you didn't actually hear the no, but you did. And notice all the stories that come up and filter it through this model, for example, right? Because it's powerful to filter our experience from this model. And then you'll notice, oh, okay, so they want me to respond really quickly. Okay, so there's like rules around how quickly people are supposed to respond. So I better like get going on it. They're really expecting me to. And if I don't respond on time, then maybe they're going to take away my funding. So you see, I ran that through all the stuff within signal number 2. And I notice all of that happening, and then I might go inward and inside me as I notice that. So this is all really fast, right? This is all like in the nanosecond of receiving the email, everything shows up. And inside yourself, you're going, oh my God, last time I wrote an email, it was really awful. And like, oh my God, if I do that again, then there's going to be consequences to how I'm going to do this. And if I pull out the knives, oh my God, what's going to happen then? But also, I don't know what else to do, because if I don't pull out the knives, then I'm definitely going to lose in this game. And I don't want to lose because nobody fucks with me or my daughter. The pause is critical, right? Like that 30-second pause, that intentional breathing to the base of your spine is critical. And, maybe we'll start tomorrow with a white feather meditation and then delve into the experience tomorrow. So this is the good stuff, because this is all about, as you're noticing all of this stuff that we've talked about till now, and as you're noticing, so we're in quantum processing, as you're noticing that there's an experience that you're having, Sarah, I'm going to meet you, sorry. As you're noticing that there's an experience that you're having, you begin to notice what's happening in the body and your attention. So everything in our world is designed to bypass the body and to go straight into a thing called emotion. I feel angry. I feel sad. I feel disappointed. Right? So now the whole focus of your attention goes on that feeling. And here's the thing, where your attention goes, energy flows. So if your attention is on sad, you're going to amplify sad. If your attention is on powerless, you're going to amplify powerless. If your attention is on rage, you're going to amplify rage, right? So it doesn't really matter what it is. It's the process of what you engage. So if you engage from a therapy model where you try to figure out what's going on so you can label it, so you can understand it, you're in your intellect. And your intellect cannot process this information. It doesn't know how. So the body constricts, and you create pain, and you create more pain, and you create deformations in the body in the form of disease. right? So all of that happens because you're seeking to figure it out, and that's not how it works. So in quantum TLC, and this is an alternative process to engage to the habit. So if the habit is, I need to figure it out yesterday or else, right? Quantum TLC becomes the pattern interrupt for you to notice that there's an alternative way to engage, and then you engage it. So, and we'll practice this continuously throughout. You notice that there's an experience that has happened. And what you do is you stand at the dotted line and you say, I choose to see this from a quantum paradigm. And in the quantum paradigm, all you've got is energy and information and flow. Nothing else. Nothing is real. It's all metaphor. So if it's all energy and information and flow, and if it's all here for my evolution, then pause sufficiently to bring your attention fully to your body. Full measure of your attention on the body. And give your body permission to expand. So this is why these questions like, am I breathing nice and deep, are so important. Am I breathing to the base of my spine? It goes deep, right? You're going deep. Is my belly out? Are my shoulders relaxed? Is my jaw clenching? Am I frowning, right? Like, what is my physicality doing? And that is your only job when a trigger presents. That's it. And within this, I promise you, within 36 to 72 hours, you will have an aha moment from having surrendered to the body. Why? Because the body has now digested and metabolized the information of the trigger sufficiently that, back to the structure of reality, expands your context for what you don't know, and brings it into the domain of, oh, I didn't know, and now I know. And so an aha moment presents itself. Does that make sense to you guys? Yeah, because this is massively important. And, we will continue to delve into it. So all of that stuff that we've been talking about brings us to the code model. So this is code model coaching for a reason, and there are presuppositions that are held in the code model, represented through the code model, for us to pay attention to. All of it, from the get-go, leads to this model. So we can't start with this model because everything that we've talked about until now leads to this model. So you'll notice in the code model, there's a physical androgynous person, right? And in the physicality of that, there's a historical, there's a past, and you'll see from first, second, third, fourth chakra. And you might also notice, if you're astute, that this is the predictable structure of thought superimposed on this. So it's not a theoretical construct. It is a lived experience. It is a lived truth about what we are as human beings. And what we are as human beings is creation out of deep energy. So first, we're energy, and we're creators. So depending on what's showing up, where in our bodies and all that sort of stuff, we can, we can use this as a framework to discover what lives in the deeper layers that we have yet not integrated. So if your attention is choice point down, you're going to be trapped in the confines and the constructs of the past, which then means you'll stay in the tiny slither of what you already know and is not working. If you bring your attention to the now, right, to the throat area, to the choice point, in the now is when you get to choose up or down, down or up. And it really is that simple. Like it really is that simple. And if you're giving yourself permission to be in quantum TLC while you have this exploration, anything and everything that comes up is welcomed. Anything and everything that comes up is an opportunity for deepening your connection to yourself, for exploring further what's meaningful to you, for discovering the truth, and then living from it. And everything that lives sixth and seventh up, that is the domain of the future. So that's the domain of who we are choosing to become. Who am I choosing to become? Who am I choosing to become? Right? So it might be easier for you in this process. Who am I? Right? Because it brings you to the moment that you're in. Who am I? So I'll touch a little bit on the 21st century Huna simply because it helps. The way that Louise has presented this helps contextualize why quantum TLC works. Okay, so in the Huna tradition, the space that I am, spirit, God, source, the intention for descending into a world of matter that I am, directly communicates with the body. So there's an intimate, deep bond between signal and body. Signal needs the body in order to be able to have an experience of life on planet Earth at this time. The signal needs the body in order to create that which it's here to create. And we can get into very fascinating conversations around finite and infinite games, because the point of signal is infinity. It's to play the game for the sake of the game. So in the process of discovering how to play the game of infinity, we evolve. And in the evolution, we become more. And in the becoming more, the void expands, because remember, it's infinite and expanding. So we can get into some really weird esoteric stuff, which is fucking epic and really fun for me to delve into. And the point for this experience is that giving yourself permission to trust that the signal that you are communicates only, are you listening, intellect? Only with the body. And as the body digests and metabolizes the information, it communicates to the intellect how to choose. So, yes or no? Left or right? Up or down? This dress or this dress? So it is really that simple, and it does take away the necessity for drama. And it means you got to stay with it. And it means you got to trust it. And you trust it. Why? Because this is how it works. So that's my overview as a very brief introduction to everything. And over the next 4 days, we will delve into each model independently, because the way that I like to structure this experience is I'll start talking, right? Like I'll start talking about a model, and as I'm talking, stuff comes up for you. And as stuff comes up for you, we continue to deepen the exploration through the models so that you discover a different way to actually live it. And as stuff comes up for you, I go to the models. So that's my job. So we've got about 25 minutes. What do you guys think? Where is everybody? What are your curiosities? What do you hear when you hear all of this? What comes up for you? I'm going to pause the share, and
I have a new sense of permission to let go coming up.